Hello and welcome to Graduate Student Spotlight. I'm your host Siddharth Arora and I'm excited to welcome Stephanie Coca. Stephanie is a career development coordinator for special populations at Oklahoma Department of Career and Technology Education in Stillwater. For almost 30 years, Stephanie has worked with diverse student populations, supporting them through Oklahoma's secondary, post secondary, vocational, and technology pathways in the public school and university systems. Currently, Stephanie is a PhD student in English department who will defend her dissertation in May. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you.
How does it feel to be here?
Great.
To begin with, would you like to tell us something about yourself and your journey towards becoming a PhD student in TESOL?
Years ago, I was a Spanish teacher, and I came here back to Stillwater to get a job, and they didn't have any jobs to teach Spanish, but they had an English as a second language teaching position, and they felt like I was qualified to do that, and I wanted a job, so that's what I did. And I quickly learned that I needed some support, so I applied to the master's program for TESOL here in the English department, and I got my master's here. At the same time, I got my master's in international studies.
Yeah.
And
That's
that-
awesome.
Yeah, that helped me a lot to understand the people I was working with and how to help them.
That is
So-
incredible. So basically, you started to pursue a whole degree just to be able to teach better, it seems.
Yeah, and it was fun because I was learning and then I could apply what I was learning immediately.
Wow. So, could you, for our audiences who may not know about TESOL much, tell what exactly is TESOL about and how could you be more detailed about how the degree was helping you
Sure.
pursue your teaching practices better?
TESOL is teaching English as a second language to speakers of other languages. I was a secondary teacher, so I had students from 6th to 12th grades who came here. At that time, most of them came here from other countries with their parents. They're coming to OSU with some sort of government funding to get their master's or PhD or bachelor's here.
Yeah.
And so they came from all over the place. And I was charged with helping them understand the academic content as well as become proficient in the language.
So, how proficient were they? Were they like able to understand the language? Or
Some
because the
were
levels
not.
are so different.
Yeah, they were all levels. I had newcomers all the way up to higher proficient students.
So, it must be so challenging to organize a class or organize information in a way where you don't know the target population, but it's so varied. If I may put it in a different context, if I'm talking to a preschooler, if I'm talking to a 12th grader, like those things, you can't tell the same story in the same way. It has to be told in a completely different form.
Yeah, because I had sixth graders who were 11 years
Yeah.
old, and then I had 20-year-olds in some cases. I definitely had to adapt my lesson plans for the different grade levels, but also for the different proficiency levels. And so I learned in my classes how to do that. I also learned a lot about second language acquisition and culture shock and
Wow.
cultural
Yeah.
competence. And so one of the things that I often did in my classes, because they were always of varying levels, is we did a lot of group work
Yeah.
and I had a lot of stations around the room where kids
Yeah.
would go to the different, and then I could work with them in smaller groups.
That is truly incredible because I think the whole concept seems so much more dependent on the people that you're teaching rather than just being, hey, I want to teach this and this is what I'm here to teach, this is what I'm an expert in.
Yeah.
Yet your expertise lies in something that other people constantly need, and to be able to repeatedly adapt depending on the situation is, yeah, I'm just like fascinated by it. I don't have a question about it, but I'm just fascinated by that.
Back then, we didn't have assessments. and our district wouldn't pay for assessments, and we weren't required to give assessments. And so it was hard to know exactly what their proficiency level was. And we had to have creative ways to get them to engage with us to know how proficient they were in the language. Whereas now we have assessments and lots of requirements. So it's a little bit different now.
So that's fascinating, because is it just that the state did not require you to give the assessment of language proficiency?
It was the federal government.
The federal government. So it was not required that we know about the students' language proficiency, but the students must have been graded on the basis of their performance for classes. And that must be really challenging for them and for you as instructors to balance out, hey, this is where things are getting lost in communication.
It was tough. And then they passed some laws where we had to make sure that no one fell behind. And so in those laws, there was a requirement, and a new requirement now, that we had to assess our English language learners for language proficiency, and they also had to do state tests. Before, they did not really have to do state tests either for a few years. And all of a sudden, under President Bush, it changed, and everybody had to be assessed all the time. And it's just, since then, we've become more proficient in testing. So we have lots of tests in the schools now.
I don't know if to hate or like that thing.
Kids don't like it.
Kids don't like it?
No.
No.
They get tired of it. And the way testing has changed is that kids that are labeled as something tested more than everybody else. So if you're
In
an
what
English,
sense?
so if you're an English language learner, you get tested for English. You also get tested in all the content areas, right? Reading and math. If you're an ESL student and you're a special education student and on an IEP, you might have another test for that.
Oh.
And so there's just lots of different assessments. And it seems like the kids that have some sort of limitation get tested the most. So they get tired of it.
That's horrible. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's in an effort to support them better. We're trying to so what we've done in our department, the schools, is we've incorporated formative assessments that it doesn't feel like they're taking an assessment. And
nice.
We are giving them projects or assignments to do to see where they are, but they don't feel like they're taking an assessment. So we're trying to put it back under cover a little bit, the way it used to be.
Yeah, at least alleviating some of that anxiety for students.
Yeah.
So that's very fascinating. So how was the transition from being a master's student doing that to pursuing a PhD and being a district coordinator and like being in administrative roles and teaching? It seems like you've been wearing so many different hats.
Yeah, it's fun though. I've enjoyed it. I love, every year I would be the administrator for summer school, ESL summer school. And that was our chance to make school whatever we wanted to make it, so that students could practice their literacy skills. And so we tried to be super creative and make it fun, make learning fun. The sky was the limit. And so as an administrator, that was really fun because we didn't have the pressure of testing or anything like that. We could just learn for fun. And the kids could just learn for fun. And so that was great. I loved that piece. Meeting the families is also one of my favorite parts. We would have, so you're required from federal law to have parent engagement nights. You take the money from the government. There's certain things you have to do. And so those were my favorite things were parent engagement, because we'd have a cultural night. We'd have the last 2 years we had Hispanic Heritage Night during Hispanic Heritage Month. And just different. Last night we had the library. We had a library event where everybody met at the public library, and they gave us a tour, and they showed us all of the books that they have in different languages that our kids might speak and want to read and practice both of their languages, English and their other language. So those are some of my favorite things that I did. I guess my third favorite thing is supporting teachers. I love to work with them on their lesson plans and help them create great units and give them ideas about how to make it easier for the students learning English
Yeah.
to access their curriculum. Yeah. So those are some of the things I love about it.
That's so fascinating. Like to me, as a student in literature, one of the things we always are thinking about is, hey, our world is so isolated, and everything about this all seems like it's about community building.
It is. And it's a necessary piece because of the isolation factor. Right. So a lot of our families have no idea what a public school in the United States is like.
Yeah.
And culturally, we're very different. So in our culture, in the American culture, parents are expected to be involved in their child's education. They're expected to go to school for lots of different things. But what I learned over the past 30 years is a lot of cultures, they don't want to be rude by coming to school. They don't want to disrespect the teacher by by making them think, the teacher think that they aren't the professional. And so they don't come to school for that reason.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have two jobs because they just got here and they can't afford a lot, and so they can't come to school when we have things for them because they're at work. Yeah. How do they get to know about our system? And so family engagement nights build community and build knowledge about our programs and about their children and what they're doing, learning this new life that their parents aren't used to.
Oh, yeah. One of the most interesting things I think happens in India a lot of times is we, as a culture, like when kids are sent to school, a lot of times, in especially like at least 20-30 years ago, when my parents were in school, like the things I hear and even my cousins, is that they would just, if somebody goes to school, they would go to the school and tell the teacher, this is your child now, do whatever you want to do with this child. And it's up to them, the teachers, to do whatever they want to do and nourish and educate and make sure like you make them better human beings. But they take a back seat, as you're saying, and they allow the teachers to be the role models in that situation. While it seems like in contemporary times in India, it is more expected for the parents to perform that kind of duty.
To be involved.
To be involved, yes.
Interesting. Yeah, so that was started 30 years ago for me.
Yeah.
A lot has changed. 30 years ago, we did cultural nights, and at our cultural nights, my students would want to dress in their traditional clothing.
Yeah.
But they don't do that anymore because the traditional clothing looks like our clothing. Because everything's Americanized. The world has become more global. The music too. We always used to have people play their traditional music. Now everybody has rap, or everybody has hip hop.
Yeah.
And so it's less unique.
Yeah.
But there are still some things that are very unique, and we still enjoy our cultural nights. Yeah. Food can always be unique.
I know. Oh my God, the food must be awesome on those nights.
It is. It's so funny because you have to be first in line or you don't get anything. Because people will pile their plates up.
So, what's your favorite cuisine that you've tried?
I like all foods, but over the years, I had Vietnamese students who made the best. They were like cream puffs. And then one of my Egyptian students made, which I still eat all the time. They're grape leaves, that like rice that with grape leaves wrapped around them.
Wow.
And steamed. It's called mashi. So we've had dumplings, which I love. What else? Most recently, one of my teacher friends that works for the schools with us now is from Egypt, and she made a halal turkey.
Oh, wow.
Which I had never had a halal turkey, but it was fantastic. Yeah, better than everybody ate that one first. And we were like, wait, this is for the Muslims who can't eat this turkey. So we have to let them have that one. But we all wanted that one instead. Yeah. So
That's funny. How did you come to OSU then? Like in all this
good
process?
question.
Yeah.
When I was at my school in London, my parents found out, when I was graduating, my parents found out they were moving to Jakarta, Indonesia, which back then was very far away.
Yeah.
There was no cell phone. The only thing we had was faxes.
Oh.
I'm dating myself, but that was the only way we could talk to each other besides a telephone, a landline. So
I remember a landline, yeah.
So they wanted me to go somewhere where I had family, and I wanted to go to California because that's the only home I knew, but we didn't have
Okay.
any family there. So they told me I needed to go to Oklahoma, and my grandparents lived in Stillwater.
Okay, interesting.
So I came to Oklahoma State University.
Wow.
And then my first year here was rough because I didn't have a car.
Oh, this is not a place without a car.
Now it's
Yeah. Better?
there were no buses, there were no
Oh my
taxis,
God.
there were no stores really. There was like one little Walmart. It was awful. The student union was the only place that had food.
Okay.
Besides the dorms had their food sometime during
Mm-hmm.
lunch, breakfast, whatever, but to get to-go food was the student union. There wasn't very much. And I had extreme culture shock. It was like I couldn't wait to go home at Christmas.
Yeah.
But then I met my husband, who came from California as well. He came out here on a baseball scholarship.
Oh, wow.
And he went through culture shock too. Because
Was
it's
that the
very different
bonding
from
thing?
California. These are completely different countries, really,
Yeah.
Oklahoma and California.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how we got to know each other, is just out of misery. But then we ended up staying because it's a nice, quiet place with
Yeah.
very little traffic, a great place for kids where you can watch your kids grow up and they can play outside still.
Absolutely. That is so true. So you ended up coming to a place where you're from Texas, right? So it's
I was born in Texas, but I never really lived there.
yeah. So it's still like coming back home and still having that cultural shock.
Yeah, because I've only been here a few times before that to see my grandparents.
Okay. Yeah. So that's interesting that you ended up helping people who were probably going through this cultural shock.
Yeah, I knew
Yeah.
exactly what they were going through. When
Yeah.
I got here, they told me that I was an international student and I needed to take the TOEFL. And I didn't, of course, but yeah, I knew exactly what what all of my students were going through. I knew how they felt in terms of the food,
Yeah.
limited types of diverse foods,
Yeah.
on friendship. Nobody was like me.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to make friends because I didn't relate to anyone. And that's how my international students feel. They always have their own little place in the
Yeah.
cafeteria, right? Or they come to our classroom and hang out in our classroom because they just feel different.
Oh yeah, for the first, honestly, 2-3 years of my degree, it was in the classroom where I felt most comfortable because that's who I was, and that's where I felt most at par and like most in common with my colleague, like with my friends even. And I completely understand that feeling and respect that work.
It's hard at
honestly.
first, isn't it?
So challenging to move continents and then try to find yourself. I think I'm more optimistic of moving to a new place now. I think it would be more fun and much more easier because when I moved, it was more just like out of nowhere. I did this thing and it was also COVID. So that didn't really help the cause.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. I
Yeah.
didn't really, it's been 5 years.
Yeah, we've had some crazy years, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. From what I gather is that you are deeply interested in teaching and your degree as a PhD student, as a master student has been about teaching. So do you remember what made you fall in love with teaching and why
I do.
teaching? Yeah.
I'd never wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Same.
My aunt and uncle and my grandmother, they were all teachers, and I always heard them tell me the bad stories. And so I thought, no, I never want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had no idea what I wanted to do. I got a degree in Spanish. So
Yeah.
my mother said, you need something to go with Spanish. You can't just learn Spanish and that's it.
That makes sense, yeah.
And so she said, if you're going to get a degree in Spanish, then you have to promise me you'll get a teaching certificate. And then if you can't find a job, you can at least teach.
Yeah.
So I begrudgingly did that. And with teaching, it's really weird. They might have changed it now, but back then you could observe classes, but you never got to try out teaching until you were finished with all your coursework. And then
Oh, interesting.
and then you do a student teaching experience.
Oh, yeah.
So I hadn't done any teaching until right when I was about to graduate. I had one semester in a public school, and I couldn't wait to tell the teacher to sit down so I could take her place because I loved it. Like the first time I was in front of kids, it was so easy. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how it happened. I never intended for it to happen, but I just fell in love with it.
So along with this, I think I love that answer. And with this, I also think it would be helpful for us to know why research about teaching. Because as a PhD student, you are researching about pedagogical methods. So why research about teaching? Could you tell us something about that? How does that kind of shape your classroom? How has that changed your practices of teaching over the years?
For my PhD, I chose to research a specific type of professional development that teaches teachers how to incorporate language instruction into their content instruction. So we teach and we think, okay, the kids need to know this vocabulary, and then I'm going to give them this reading, and they're going to answer questions about this reading. But we don't consider, don't they need to know the words between that content vocabulary?
Yeah.
And how do they learn how to use those words? So this professional development that I studied is teaching teachers how to teach the words between the content.
Yeah.
That there's patterns in those, like we have patterns in our language. So if we compare and contrast in history, we're going to use that same language between the content to compare and contrast in science.
Yeah.
And to compare and contrast in math. How do we teach that? And
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and so it's helpful. The teachers really enjoyed it. It was eye-opening for them. They're like, oh my gosh, I don't teach them language. I don't teach any of my kids language.
Yeah.
And so the thing
But they are teaching them language without knowing it.
right,
And that's kind
but
of
not purposeful and explicit instruction.
Absolutely.
And I thought, gosh, we really need that because it's not just for our English language learners. How many of our native speakers need that support?
Yeah.
In fact, I've been working with Career Tech the last few months, and the technology centers have high school students and they have adults. And I've been talking to the teachers, and they say the kids come to us and they cannot read or write. Their literacy skills are so low. And I said, oh, your special population students, your ELLs? And no, just our regular kids. And so this is a professional development that could be useful for all students.
Yeah.
And the challenge throughout my career and throughout many ESL teacher careers across the nation is that we're required to give professional development to teachers about ELL, but teachers don't want it because they want something that relates to all of their students.
Yeah.
And so if we can find something where it's going to support our ELLs really well, but also all of our students, that's the magic button or whatever. So that's what this is, I feel like.
Yeah, that's interesting and not shocking though. Like, I think there is resistance in a lot of people to learn things that affect the minority population in any way. And I think there is something to be said about as a teacher, I have always tried to be a professor or an instructor where I want to teach the person who does not get it. That's the point of teaching. And what it seems like to me, your program and like the way you are framing things would be able to do is to teach that person, no matter who it is, whether it is a native English speaker who has learned how to speak, but the literacy levels because of digital world has not really been exceptional lately. And also just to develop the idea of learning how to learn the language, like the meta language and the
Yes.
circumstances around it, like just to be able to map those things are really helpful even for a native American or native English speaker, because that's how critical thinking is developed. Yeah.
And when you say that you like to focus on the student that can't always grasp it quickly, the beauty of this program is that it gives different entry points. So for language, so
Yeah.
those kids that do get it, what's some really fancy language that they can use? Let's teach them that fancy stuff that they like to say,
Yeah.
right? But for the lowest proficient student, we have another entry point that gives them the basic language patterns. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. Thank you for doing this work. It's very important, I think. And so, of course, you had the cultural shock of coming to the US and you you wanted to go to California, but were sent in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. Was it helpful to see the education curriculum as an outsider almost and be able to help with that? And as a teacher, be able to see things, somebody who has traveled in different places and being at a space and holding important positions where you have had the chance of implementing change.
I think the perspective, that's a hard one to answer. But when I first entered public schools here, the cultural shock for me it was another time of culture shock in my life. So the first time was when I came to OSU as a university student. But then as a teacher going into a public school, the cultural barriers to certain populations was very evident, and it was very disturbing to me. And so I knew that I needed to make changes where I could.
Yeah.
And just as a beginning teacher, my love is creating things. I love to create and have events. I'm very good at event planning.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And for my first year of teaching, I created a market in one of the school gymnasiums, and families came and we sold items and we practiced Spanish, and from my very first year of teaching. And I think anytime you do an event when kids are involved and you're learning new things, it breaks down barriers.
Absolutely.
Because it's kids.
Yeah.
And I learned early on that was something that I could contribute, is to show that cultures should be respected for their differences. You don't have to like that culture, but you have to you at least learn about it and show the respect of learning about it.
And not generalize it. And
Right, and not generalize
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, everybody that comes to those things, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know about this culture. This is so cool.
Yeah.
And so it breaks down barriers. But the challenge is continual. So as much as I've done it, year after year, you have to keep going.
Yeah. That sounds incredibly hard, honestly. I deeply admire your commitment towards working for people who need that kind of help. And I think it's not only the fact that people from minority groups might need that help, but also, as we talked about, like native English speakers. And in an increasingly globalized and cosmopolitan world, it makes sense to have people work on building those bridges between communities and making sure that nobody's left alone in that sense.
Yeah. And just those soft skills, too, of being able to interact with people that are different from you. I think COVID made it really hard again. We had to start over because we all got into our little rooms with barriers and
We are
walls.
fit into our Zoom screens.
Yes. And we had to start over again and say, okay, let's socialize again.
Yeah. Truly, very interesting. Thank you. So, how does your dissertation provide some solutions or observe the situation at K-12 level? Would you like to tell us something more in detail about your dissertation in relation to this project that you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that came out of the dissertation, one thing that we learned was that it is possible for mainstream classroom teachers to teach language explicitly in their classrooms. We never knew how to do it. Personally, I never knew how to do it before. I talked to them about it. I tried to help them do that, but I never had a way to show them how to do that.
Yeah.
And this program that we researched really showed teachers how to do it.
Okay.
So that's one thing we learned. But to do it right, it has to be done over a long period of time. And we have to provide support and collaboration time and over at least a period of a year. So that's the other thing we learned. Because I don't know if it's like this in India in public schools, but here we always have teachers go to professional developments and learn something on a day, and they go that day, and then they go back to their classrooms, and we never use it again.
Oh, yeah, totally. I could see that.
So this is a system that if you choose to use it, you need to use it all year long and support teachers all year long. And then the next year they support a new cohort. That's what the research showed. And that's what I found when we did our study.
Wow, that is fascinating. I'm thrilled to hear their work, honestly. It's fascinating to me. So, how has your job been as a district coordinator for English over the last 15 years? How's the job been like? That's something I'm fascinated by.
It's had its ups and downs.
Yeah.
There's been some really neat things that have happened in the last few years. When everything happened where the United States left Afghanistan, we had promised to have many Afghans here in the United States, and Stillwater was one of the areas that accepted families.
Yeah.
And we thought we were going to get like 100 families or something. We did not. We got a lot less than that. But in planning for this, it was really nice. I reached out to OSU, to my department here, and we put together a collaborative effort, and then we joined with Catholic Charities, but we still didn't have enough resources. It was the first time I had ever faced families that might not be able to read and write in any language. And so communication, usually we would translate something into another language.
Yeah.
But how do we do that? And then it was a population that we didn't have anyone that spoke that language at OSU, which was rare. Usually you can find someone.
Very few people might speak that.
Right.
Yeah.
And someone reached out to me from the State Department and said there may be some funding. So I applied for Department of Human Services refugee grant funds, and up to now, they've given us over $300,000 to support our Afghan families. And for the first time in my career, I had enough money to do all the things that you need to do to support immigrant families' acclimation to the public school system and the community.
That's so amazing.
It was awesome. We did so many fun things. We worked with OSU Extension, and they did activities teaching them cooking methods that we use here, what foods to shop for, because I remember when my parents lived in Indonesia and we'd go to the store, I had no idea what to buy.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know what anything was.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to get used to things. And also the prices are so different. You're constantly
converting.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So I thought about that, and I thought,
Yeah.
these Afghan women, how are they going to know what to shop for?
Absolutely.
There are
Yeah.
no Afghan stores here. And there's one market, the Himalayan, that have something
Oh, the
which they end,
overpriced
yeah,
place. I'm sorry
yeah,
to say that on
that's
record
very
here.
expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah. And so we had OSU Extension come in and show them healthy foods that they
Yeah.
could shop for, and we made recipes that they could try
Yeah.
and taught them how to do it. What else we did? We taught them what it's like to have a bank account, do insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I found out from them was they don't have insurance. There's no health insurance, there's no homeowners or rental insurance. But here you have to have that.
Yeah.
And there were lots of things like that. So we would have Saturday schools where we would eat together, have an activity for parents and children, and learn together. We did all kinds of things. We'd have English class. We did a sewing club because the ladies like to sew. So we did a sewing club, and they could sell the things they sewed. What else?
I
But
have so
yeah,
many
so
questions
we
on
had
that.
okay. No, but it was the best time of my life because we had money to do what we needed to do
Absolutely.
to support the families. It was wonderful.
I truly love that answer, and I don't think there's probably anything that I have done in my life that even comes close to what you have done there. Honestly, it's just truly amazing. I'm in awe of the work that you have done. And so, one of the things I want to ask you about this whole thing is that, first of all, were the families able to talk to each other? Were they able to understand each other?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I wanted to make sure.
Because there were two different languages, yes. But
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been. That would be really crazy if they all spoke different languages and you were trying to communicate with so many different people.
it was at first.
At first, yeah. Yeah, that must have been hard. Another thing is, so you've been doing a PhD with this the whole time.
Yes.
Oh my God, how has that experience been like?
It's been challenging. I almost gave up a few times. But I have a really good advisor, and she told me that I can't quit.
Your advisor, Dr. Link, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Link is amazing.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She was like, "You're going to do this. What's your why? Why do you want to do this so bad?" And so I told her my why, and she said, "You got to keep going." So, yeah.
I don't think there's anybody who, as a PhD student, who has not given up on a PhD. Probably everybody at some point has.
Yeah.
And then you just keep going.
Most of my friends never finished.
Oh.
Yeah. Because it's just the last bit is so hard. The writing part is so hard. So I have quite a few friends that got to the dissertation and then they even wrote most of it and then never finished.
That is scary.
And that would have been me. But Dr. Link, she guilted me into it.
Yeah, shout out to Dr. Link.
I
here.
know.
Yay. Yeah, Dr. Link. Yeah, I'm sure she'll watch this.
Yeah. Tell her to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. How has the experience been in terms of dealing with different native speakers in different languages? So the challenges must be so different to teach, let's say, somebody from Asia, somebody from Africa, somebody from Latin America, somebody from China, somebody from an indigenous population. So those challenges must be so different to navigate. And that's like where my mind keeps going back
It's
again
actually,
and again.
I feel like it's actually easier when you have a diverse group of students in your classroom because they want to get to know each other. And so the only way they can get to know each other is through speaking English.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
And so when we have a whole bunch of one language in one classroom, it makes it harder because they're speaking their most comfortable language and we can't understand it.
Oh, yeah. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
So we're really not sure what they're saying. So having a group, and it mainly happens more at the high school level, we get more diversity. But when I first started teaching here, We had students from everywhere, from Malaysia, Indonesia, Egypt, South Korea, many African nations. And now mainly we have Spanish. We have very few from other countries.
Wow,
It's completely changed.
interesting. And what has happened to the Afghan population? Are they still here?
They are. We still have four families, maybe five, but the rest have gone because there aren't jobs here. That it's expensive to live in Stillwater, and if you're a single parent with quite a few kids, you cannot live in Stillwater and make enough money to get by.
Yeah, the wages are probably so low.
Yeah, because it's fast food. There's not a lot of industry. Like in Tulsa, a lot of them went to Tulsa because there are some factories where they can do factory work and it
Yeah.
makes more money.
Yeah. Are you in touch with them?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that if you can.
All of my students, like I have
Yeah.
since 1996, I keep in touch with a lot of my students. Anyone that will keep in touch with me, I keep in touch with them.
You're a great
That's-
teacher.
Oh no, we just have good relationships. But some of them own restaurants here.
Yeah.
Some from 1996. Some
Yeah.
of my first students have Cafe Mona,
Oh, wow.
and then
You get a discount there?
no.
Oh, no. What's the point?
But they need to make money, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm just joking.
Yeah, so a lot of the different restaurants here, I have students, but then some of the Afghans that left went to Tulsa. So recently I went and visited them and ate dinner with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've had kids come back from different countries to visit Stillwater, and they come knock on my door because they all know where I live. So
Sweet.
it's nice. Yeah, it's small town. It's what you can do in a small town.
Absolutely. Yeah. It is amazing. So, how do you feel about graduating in a few weeks?
Can't wait.
Can't wait. Are you going to walk?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, my kids would probably, because I have a 26-year-old, a 21-year-old, and an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And when I started the program, the dissertation program, my 26-year-old went to college that year, and she has a master's now. And my 18-year-old, we were supposed to graduate together, him high school, me here, and he's in his fourth year of university. So.
Oh, yeah. It's been a while.
So they're all ready for me to be done.
Yeah. Are they going to be there to support you?
I don't know. I know my youngest will be. My other two live far away. Or one lives in Kansas and one lives in California.
That must be challenging.
No, it's good.
It's good?
It's a great places to go visit, right?
True. I agree. Yeah. One question that we ask everybody at the end is what's next for Stephanie, the researcher, the teacher, and the person?
One of the reasons I wanted to get my dissertation, get my PhD, it was a retirement gift to myself in a way. My why from Dr. Link, my why was my grandmother left me the money to get my PhD when she died because she wanted me to keep going. And my mom never got to go to college. And so that's one of my whys. But the other is a retirement gift to me so that I could travel and maybe teach English in other places around the world and enjoy doing what I love long into my older years. Yeah. When I don't want to go to work every day from 8 to 5.
Absolutely.
This is something I can still do.
Yeah.
And I enjoy the research piece. I don't want to do research necessarily again.
Who wants to do research?
I enjoy reading the research
Yeah.
and learning and trying to create solutions to the
Yeah.
practice of teaching English as a second language.
Truly incredible. Thank you for such an amazing conversation. It's been truly delightful. I've learned so much from you, and I hope I get to see you walk, and it's going to be awesome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been really nice. Thank you everybody for watching. It has truly been an amazing experience for me to be able to host Graduate Student Spotlight over the last 5 episodes. And this is our last for the year. We'll see you again next year with more interesting, exciting graduate student interviews. Stay tuned. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe this video. Thank you for supporting us. Bye.